Mangwanani Malalepo Vukenjani Dumelang Banave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Mberi, and these are some of the top stories we'll be looking at. Pope Leo begins Africa tour with historic first visit to Algeria. Benin counts votes in election testing growth and democratic balance. DA's Hill-Lewis targets trust gap with black voters after leadership win. Malawi arrests former finance minister in expanding post-election crackdown. And France debates bill to ease the return of colonial-era African artifacts. Gore also joins us with updates from Zimbabwe, including the civil servant salary increase, which apparently kicks off today, amongst other pertinent stories, including the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3 and the reassigning of the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission chairperson. This is Africa Good Morning on DSTV 285, GOTV 25, oneup2.com, NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. My name is Ashwin Mberi. Top stories shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises, from artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us, something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative sport tourism.
All right, let's get into our top stories. Pope Leo XIV has begun an 11-day tour of Africa, marking his first visit to Algeria and his second major foreign trip since his election in May last year. The visit spans 4 countries, Algeria, Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea, and includes 11 cities, with the Pope traveling nearly 18,000 kilometers on 18 flights. The Vatican says the trip reflects Africa's growing importance to Catholicism, with more than 288 million Catholics on the continent. Algeria, a predominantly Sunni Muslim country, was chosen as the first stop due to its link to Saint Augustine, whose teachings have shaped the Pope. In Algiers, he addressed political leaders, condemning violations of international law and neo-colonial tendencies. He visited Martyrs' Memorial and key religious sites, including the Great Mosque and Basilica of Our Lady of Africa, emphasizing interfaith dialogue. The tour will also address conflict in Cameroon, peace building in Angola, and social justice in Equatorial Guinea. Benin began counting ballots following a presidential election seen as a test of both its economic progress and democratic stability. Finance Minister Romuald Wadagni is the front-runner to succeed outgoing President Patrice Talon, who is stepping down after 2 terms. Electoral Commission Chief Saka Lafia reported generally calm voting, though civil society monitors cited about 100 incidents, including early openings and suspiciously full ballot boxes. Despite 8 million eligible voters, turnout appeared modest in several polling stations in Cotonou. Wadagni, backed by ruling parties, faces opposition candidate Paul Honkupe in a race lacking strong opposition as the main opposition party failed to field a candidate. As we get into our next story, keep in mind that at the end of our top stories, we will play a video by Pope Leo as he addressed the masses in Algeria and indeed the international community. But for now, we are in South Africa, where Geordin Hill-Lewis was elected leader of South Africa's Democratic Alliance, pledging to address a trust deficit with black voters as he aims to expand the party's support base. The DA, which holds about 22% of parliamentary seats, has struggled to shed its image as a party of white privilege. Hill-Lewis succeeds John Steenhuisen and becomes the party's second consecutive white leader. Now, he said the party must better communicate and demonstrate its commitment to the advancement of all South Africans by being more present in communities and responsive to voter concerns. The DA entered a coalition government with the African National Congress in 2024, and Hill-Lewis affirmed his commitment to making the coalition work while aiming to surpass the ANC politically. The party continues to oppose broad-based black economic empowerment policies, arguing it supports black advancement but not the current framework, acknowledging that this stance contributes to mistrust among voters. Now, Malawian police have arrested former Finance Minister Simplex Chithyola on suspicion of money laundering and abuse of office as part of a widening post-election crackdown on former senior officials. Chithyola, now the opposition leader in parliament, handed himself in after learning he was being sought by investigators, according to his lawyer. He served as finance minister between 2023 and 2025 under ex-president Lazarus Chakwera, whose government was replaced following elections marked by rising living costs. Authorities have intensified investigations into figures linked to the former Malawi Congress Party administration, with at least 8 former ministers or senior officials detained or questioned. These include Colleen Zamba and former ministers responsible for trade, local government, information and agriculture. Sostwen Gwengwe was also detained and later released on bail. The arrests signal efforts by President Peter Mutharika's administration to review decisions made by its predecessor. Police have not yet confirmed a court date. Now, France's lower house of parliament is debating a bill aimed at simplifying the return of artworks and artifacts taken from Africa during the colonial period between 1815 and 1972. The country still holds tens of thousands of such items, and the proposed legislation seeks to accelerate restitution. The bill has already been approved by the upper house and now requires approval from the National Assembly to become law. It has drawn criticism from across the political spectrum, with the far-left France Unbowed Party calling for broader scope, while the far-right National Rally argues it should be limited to countries with cordial relations with France. President Emmanuel Macron previously pledged to return looted artifacts and acknowledged historical abuses, stating France would no longer interfere in former colonies. The country has received multiple restitution requests from nations including Mali, Algeria, and Benin. Existing legal frameworks have been cited as slowing the process of returning these cultural items. All right, just before we get into the weather, which will be just before we get into Zimbabwe report with talent Gore, here are the words of Pope Leo after he landed in Africa.
God desires peace for every nation, a peace that is not merely an absence of conflict, but one that is an expression of justice and dignity. This peace, which allows us to face the future with a reconciled spirit, is possible only through forgiveness. The true struggle for liberation will be definitely won only when peace in our hearts has finally been achieved. I know how difficult it is to forgive. However, as conflicts continue to multiply throughout the world, we cannot add resentment upon resentment, generation after generation. The future belongs to men and women of peace. In the end, justice will always triumph over injustice, just as violence, despite all appearances, will never have the last word.
All right, it's time for us to talk to Talent Gore as she delivers the Zimbabwe report. Talent Wamkase.
Africa.
Tamuka Hedu. Now, Talent, Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3, also known as CAB 3, is set to move to Parliament.
Yes, after the public consultation hearings that were held just last week, the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3 is now headed to Parliament for scrutiny by the members of Parliament, marking a major milestone in the ongoing quest to reform the country's governance architecture in line with the new developmental thrust. Parliamentarians recently traversed the length and breadth of the country's consulting citizens on the bill in accordance with Section 141 of the Zimbabwean Constitution. And right now, Parliament must facilitate public involvement in its legislative and other processes, and in the process of its committees. It should ensure that interested parties are consulted about bills being considered by Parliament, unless such consultation is inappropriate or impracticable. In an interview, the Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Minister Ziyambi said the bill will now be subjected to debate in Parliament soon after the lapse. He said will be done soon after the minister has introduced the bill. He also said that legislators will analyze the bill clause by clause at the committee stage, and after the bill is approved, it will be read for the third time, signaling its passage. After the bill sails through, it will be transferred to Senate, where it will be subjected to the same process. Among the key highlights, the bill seeks to extend the presidential term to 7-year cycles from the current 5, and under the changes, the president will also be elected by a joint sitting of Parliament, and a new Zimbabwe Electoral Delimitation Commission is also being proposed, while oversight of the voters' roll will be transferred back to the Registrar General. It was transferred to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission this past a few years, but if the bill passes through, the voters' roll will be transferred back to the Registrar General, because the Registrar General is the oversight of who is alive in Zimbabwe. Is the oversight of who is dead in Zimbabwe, and he knows each and every person who is alive, who is dead in Zimbabwe. So the voters' roll is going to be transferred back to the Registrar General. So as of now, the bill is now going to Parliament for debate, and after that, it will also go to Senate to go through the same process.
Now, Talent, let's talk about the constitutional amendment bill, the hearings which happened, where it was very clear that any dissenting voices were actually being shut out, to the point that a lot of them decided to give up. And I understand that there's a protest which is underway, which has been approved by the police, as well as George Charamba's support of CAB 3.
Yes, so when the hearings were taking place in different parts of the country, there were dissenting voices that were not allowed to share their views. Only those who were in support of the CAB 3 were allowed to share their views. But you find out that most people were not who are not in support of of the constitutional amendment bill number 3 were not given an opportunity to air their views. Some were even arrested, and I think last week we showed a video of David Coulthard, who is a lawyer. He was harassed. He was even chased away from the hearings, and he had his phone stolen. But the person who stole that phone was actually seen live on video, but that person is not being arrested. And following those all those fracas that was happening, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission actually produced a report indicating some of the human rights abuses that were taking place during those hearings. But soon after that report was released, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission chairperson was reassigned to the Public Service Commission as a commissioner. She was the chairperson of that of the Human Rights Commission, but she has since been reassigned to the Public Service Commission. And this was done by President Emmerson Mnangagwa on Friday, where he had reassigned Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission chairperson Fungai Jesse Majome to the Public Service Commission, a move that legal experts are condemning as unconstitutional and void. The announcement came just days after the Commission issued a report on the conduct of the Constitutional of Zimbabwe Amendment number 3 bill public hearings by Parliament. A statement which was signed by Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Martin Rushwaya, cited Section 202, subsection 1 of the Constitution as the basis for the reassignment, which takes immediate effect. The dismissal came 3 days after the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission issued a statement dated April 7, documenting serious human rights violations during the public hearings held between March 30 and April 4, 2026. The independent commission, which deployed monitoring teams to hearings across the provinces, found that individuals and groups opposed to the bill were harassed, intimidated, denied audience, and in some instances, physically attacked. It further noted a pattern of controlled participation across most provinces, with youth vetting participants at a venue entrances and supervising sign-in registered. In Mashonaland West Mondorengezi, men holding whips were involved in controlling entry, and the ZHRC statement said the conduct violated constitutionally guaranteed rights, including freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, personal security, human dignity, and equality and non-discrimination. The Commission called on all stakeholders to exercise tolerance, respect divergent views, and uphold constitutional values. So that was the report that was released just after Parliament concluded its public hearings on the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3. But just 3 days after that, the chairperson of that commission was reassigned to another commission, to the Public Service Commission, and she will be just a commissioner and not the chairperson of that commission. And just yesterday there was a video of her actually taking all of her things from the office and handing over her office keys to the security at the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission offices. So right, has been reassigned, and she will be at the Public Service Commission as a commissioner and not a chairperson of that commission.
Thank you very much for going into the depths of that story, Talent. Now, there might be one group, and I say might because I don't know if they're satisfied with it, but there might be one group of people in Zimbabwe who are particularly happy today, and it's the civil servants, as they're expecting their increased salary to kick in. All right, so as Talent is on our way with that, let me give you a little bit of a background to that story. Civil servants in Zimbabwe are set to start receiving their revised salaries from today, with members of the uniformed forces expected to be the first to benefit as the government begins implementing the new remuneration structure. The adjustments, effective from April 2026 after a comprehensive job evaluation exercise, range from around 370 US for lower grades to nearly $900 for senior levels. Entry-level A3 grades will receive between 370 and 375 US. Employees in the B band from B1 to B5 will earn between 376 and 435 US. Talent, could you please take us into that story?
Yes, civil servants are set to begin receiving their revised salaries starting today, with uniformed forces expected to be the first to benefit as the government begins implementing the new remuneration structure. The development marks a significant step in the ongoing efforts to improve the welfare of public sector workers, especially coming at a time when broader economic measures, including the strengthening of the local currency, which is the Zimbabwean gold, are being implemented to enhance stability. And you also understand that just 2 weeks ago, the nurses at public hospitals in Zimbabwe, they protested against the low salaries that they were receiving, and they had given the government an ultimatum that if the government does not increase their salaries by today, they're going to strike. They were going to down their tools starting from today. So this revised salary review comes at an option time that the nurses wanted to go into the streets and march against poor remunerations. Under the new structure, salaries range from about 370 United States dollars for lower grades to nearly 900 United States dollars for senior levels, reflecting the government's commitment to aligning remuneration with roles, responsibilities, and levels of seniority. Entry-level grades such as A3 will earn between 370 and 375, whilst those in the B band, covering grades B1 to B5, will receive between 376 United States dollars and 435 United States dollars. Mid-level employees in the C band will earn from 463 United States dollars to 536 United States dollars, while senior grades under the D band will see salaries ranging from 724 United States dollars to 897 at the top end. And also their salaries will be split. Another component will come in the Zimbabwean gold, and another component will come in the United States dollar. So starting today, and starting with the uniformed forces, civil servants will actually receive a revised salary component, and this comes at a time when most of the civil servants were actually planning on going into the streets to protest the low remunerations that they were getting from government.
All right. Thank you very much, Talent, for giving us that comprehensive Zimbabwe report.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
And from me, Ashrim Berry, until tomorrow, where we get into the Botswana report with Rorisang Mohojwe, as well as other potent stories from Africa, we say, Swera Jakanaka.